To the Minister of Finance, how much did median weekly incomes for all people from all sources fall in the June 2010 quarter compared to the June 2009 quarter?
The Honourable Bill English.
Mr Speaker, the member has, I think, found the only income measure he can in which a measurement dropped. But he should read the Stats New Zealand warning about using these figures. Movements in average and median income stats are influenced by many factors, as well as changes in levels of income. Movements are also influenced by the composition of the population.
Mr. Speaker, I've got two points to make in respect to the answer the Minister's giving. One, there was an implicit flick at the questioner saying, he's only found a certain data series. Secondly, he's now employing the tactic used by the Prime Minister yesterday, which is to explain to us how the data series is compiled. We understand that. The question's a very simple one. It's set down how much did mean weekly incomes for all people from all sources fall, blah, 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 through the question there. So it's set out there pretty simply, and he should just answer that question.
I hear the point of order, and I would say to the Minister, it would be helpful if it is a very straight question that is capable of answer, and the Minister should answer it. I was listening to see if the Minister would answer it, but I believe an answer should be given and then the explanation perhaps to follow it, but it would be preferable to answer the question. The Honourable Bill English.
Mr Speaker, well, in order to explain this particular measure, Stats New Zealand say that the movements in average and median income statistics are influenced by many factors, as well as changes in levels of income. Movements are also influenced by the composition of the population from survey to survey. So the decline in median weekly income is $9, which Stats New Zealand point out was not statistically significant, and it could have dropped for any number of reasons, such as more children in the population, drops in interest rates, and more people going on benefits.
Explanation like that at least was not being critical of the question, but it was a very simple question and didn't actually need quite such a long answer. I'm sure there'll be plenty of opportunity to explain it as supplementaries come up. The Honourable David Cunliffe.
Mr Speaker, does the Minister of Finance consider an income drop of $9 a week to be statistically significant to a family who, as Vader Advantage recently reported, is one of tens of thousands of New Zealanders who are finding they just cannot afford to pay their bills?
The Honourable Bill English.
Well, Mr Speaker, as the member well knows, the statistic he's using doesn't measure the change in the income of that family. It actually doesn't. All measures of the change in income of the family have gone up. The median income figure includes all sorts of stuff, including changes in the population. So the member shouldn't use it to describe family incomes. He knows he's wrong.
Speaker.
Chris Tremaine.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. To the Minister of Finance, what is the best measure of wage growth in New Zealand?
The Honourable Bill English.
Well, Mr Speaker, the best measure of wage growth has at least one characteristic, and that is it has to be a measure of wages, which the median income is not. It is not a measure of wages. The best one is what determines the wage floor for New Zealand Super each year, and that is the movement in the after-tax average wage, which comes from the Quarterly Employment Survey. And this one is used because it's set out in the New Zealand Superannuation and Retirement Income Act, passed by the Labour government in 2001. If we look at movements in the after-tax average wage, from 1999 to 2008, after-tax wages went up 33%, but inflation went up by almost exactly the same amount. What this means is that when you take out the effects of inflation, in 9 years under Labour, after-tax wages went up by only 3%.
Speaker, supplementary.
The Honourable David Cunliffe.
Mr Speaker, what does the Minister think would be a more accurate indicator for a struggling family in, I don't know, perhaps the Mana electorate? Would it be the average, which is skewed by, say, national voting millionaires in Remuera, or does he think it would be the median, which measures the position of the person who is in the middle of the income scale?
The Honourable Bill
Well,
English.
Mr. Speaker, again the member is employing deliberate obfuscation. The median he is using is not the median wage. The measure he is using includes the interest income of his millionaire mates in Parnell or Mission Bay or wherever it is. It doesn't measure wages.
Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Tremaine.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. To the Minister of Finance, how does wage growth of 3% over the period 1999 to 2008 compare to other periods?
The Honourable Bill English.
Well, Mr. Speaker, that's a very good question. If you use the wage measure legislated by the previous Labor government, it shows that in 9 years while they were in office, that measure grew by 3%. In the 9-year period from 1990 to 1999, that is the previous 9 years, real after-tax wages grew by 15%. Obviously, we don't have a 9-year period since 2008 to do a full comparison, but in less than 2 years since September 2008, real after-tax wages have gone up by 9%.
Honourable David Cunliffe.
Mr. Speaker, does the Minister consider it realistic or statistically significant to quote a measure of income which takes the average, not the median, which excludes the impact of working for families and paid parental leave and childcare and the other factors that make up the social wage? And does he think it fair and appropriate to include in National's figures the effect of Labor's 2008 tax cut?
The Honourable Bill English.
Mr. Speaker, yes, I do.
The Honourable David Cunliffe.
Mr. Speaker, in that case, based on the fall in median income of $9 a week, how long does he think it will take a person on the median income to save for a deposit on a home in Auckland? Or has Auckland now become a place where, as Bernard Hickey has said, quote, you can buy a home, you just can't afford to have a family?
The Honourable Bill English.
Well, Mr. Speaker, as I've explained, the measure the member is using for income is not relevant to families who are trying to save for a deposit for a house in Auckland. And those families have had a significant increase in their real after-tax wage. And one of the reasons for that is pretty simple. They've had 2 rounds of tax cuts since this government came into office. If they earn $48,000 or less, their top statutory tax rate is 17.5 cents. So if they do another hour of overtime, they keep 82.5 cents of it, and that is a strong incentive for them to get ahead, and the tax on their savings have been lowered as well.
Question number 5, Nikki Wagner.
Thank you, Mr.